The ultimate American dream, a thriving career, immense fame, and a multi-million-dollar contract. Pat Tillman had it all as an NFL star. But he walked away from that gilded life, choosing instead the dust and danger of the battlefield, driven by a profound sense of duty after 9/11. His death in Afghanistan was initially hailed as a heroic sacrifice in the line of fire, a powerful symbol for a grieving nation. But the truth of how he died was far more complex, shrouded in secrecy, and would eventually expose a shocking cover-up at the highest levels. This is the tragic story of Pat Tillman, the American hero whose legacy became a battleground for truth. Welcome to the Dark Chapters. Daniel Tillman was born on November 6, 1976, in Fremont, California. From an early age, Pat exhibited a remarkable blend of intelligence, athleticism, and a fiercely independent spirit that would define his life. He was the eldest of three brothers, raised in a close-knit, highly principled family where integrity, hard work, and critical thinking were deeply valued. These formative years instilled in him a strong moral compass and a skepticism towards authority that would later play a crucial role in his story. His parents, Mary and Patrick Tillman Sr., encouraged intellectual curiosity and physical prowess, fostering an environment where Pat could cultivate his diverse talents. Pat's athletic abilities became evident early on. He excelled in multiple sports, but it was football that truly captured his passion and showcased his relentless drive. He attended Leland High School in San Jose, California, where he quickly became a standout player, known for his ferocity on the field and his leadership qualities. He was not the biggest or fastest player, but his intensity, intelligence, and unwavering commitment to his team made him exceptional. These qualities caught the attention of college recruiters, despite his relatively modest physical stature for a football player. His athletic talent earned him a scholarship to Arizona State University, where he joined the Sun Devils football team. At ASU, Pat Tillman truly cemented his reputation as an extraordinary athlete and an even more remarkable individual. He played linebacker, a position that perfectly suited his aggressive, hard-hitting style. He was a force to be reckoned with on the field, often making game-changing plays through sheer will and strategic intelligence. His senior year in 1997 was particularly outstanding. He led the Sun Devils to an undefeated regular season and a trip to the Rose Bowl. Tillman was recognized for his exceptional performance, being named the Pac-10 Defensive Player of the Year. Beyond his athletic achievements, he also excelled academically, graduating summa cum laude from ASU's Business College in just 3.5 years, a testament to his formidable intellect and discipline. Following his stellar college career, Pat Tillman entered the NFL Draft in 1998. Despite his collegiate success and impressive intelligence, his relatively small size for a linebacker, 6 feet 205 pounds, led many professional scouts to doubt his viability in the NFL. He was considered an underdog, a long shot for a professional career. However, the Arizona Cardinals, impressed by his tenacity and character, drafted him in the 7th round as the 226th overall pick. It was a late-round selection, reflecting the skepticism surrounding his physical attributes. Yet, Pat Tillman defied expectations once again. He transitioned to safety in the NFL, a position where his speed, agility, and keen understanding of the game could be better utilized. His transition was remarkably successful. Tillman quickly became a starter for the Cardinals, known for his relentless pursuit of the ball, his bone-jarring hits, and his leadership in the defensive backfield. He quickly endeared himself to fans with his grit and determination, earning a reputation as one of the hardest-working and most committed players in the league. By 2001, he was not only a star player but also incredibly popular, earning the respect of teammates, coaches, and opponents alike. He finished the 2001 season with a career-high 159 tackles, solidifying his status as a top-tier NFL safety. Off the field, Tillman remained grounded and true to his values. He was known for his humility, his quiet intensity, and his disdain for the glitz and glamour of professional sports. He drove a beat-up pickup truck, preferred camping to luxury vacations, and remained deeply committed to his family and his longtime girlfriend, Marie Ugenti, whom he would later marry. He was not motivated by fame or money, often shunning media attention and refusing endorsement deals that didn't align with his personal ethics. His contracts reflected his value to the team. After the 2001 season, the Cardinals offered him a 3-year, $3,600,000 0 cents contract extension, a testament to his importance to the franchise. Then came September 11, 2001. The terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon profoundly impacted Pat Tillman, as they did millions of Americans. For Tillman, however, the impact was deeply personal and transformative. He watched the events unfold, grappling with a profound sense of duty and patriotism. He felt a deep moral imperative to respond, believing that the attacks were a direct assault on the values he held dear. The pursuit of an NFL career, with its immense financial rewards and public adoration, suddenly seemed trivial and self-serving in the face of what he perceived as a national crisis. Despite being offered a multi-million-dollar contract extension by the Arizona Cardinals, Tillman made a decision that stunned the sports world. He walked away from football. He turned down the lucrative offer, sacrificing guaranteed millions, to enlist in the United States Army. This was an unprecedented move for an active NFL player in his prime. He publicly stated his reasons were driven by a sense of patriotism and a need to be part of something greater than himself. He told reporters, "I haven't done anything to help this country." He wanted to serve, to contribute directly to the defense of his nation, and he wanted to do so on the front lines. In May 2002, Pat Tillman joined the U.S. Army, enlisting alongside his younger brother, Kevin Tillman, who left a promising career in professional baseball to join him. This joint enlistment further underscored the depth of their conviction and their family's patriotic values. Pat and Kevin chose to become Army Rangers, an elite special operations unit known for its rigorous training and demanding missions. This choice reflected Pat's unwavering desire to serve in the most challenging and impactful capacity possible. He was not seeking a ceremonial role. He wanted to be at the heart of the action, to contribute meaningfully to the war effort. His decision reverberated across the nation, making him a symbol of ultimate sacrifice and patriotism, a true American hero who put duty before personal gain. The NFL star had become a soldier, exchanging the roar of the crowd for the silence of the battlefield, embarking on a path that would lead to heroism, controversy, and a profound national tragedy. After his impactful decision to leave the NFL, Pat Tillman, alongside his brother Kevin, embarked on the arduous journey to become U.S. Army Rangers. Their choice of this elite special operations unit underscored Pat's unwavering commitment to serve in the most challenging and direct capacity possible. The Ranger Assessment and Selection Program, RASP, is known for its brutal physical and mental demands, designed to break down candidates and rebuild them as disciplined, resilient soldiers. Pat, despite his athletic background, faced the same rigorous tests as any other recruit. His discipline, mental toughness, and inherent leadership qualities, honed on the football field, served him well. He pushed through the intense physical training, the grueling marches, and the psychological pressures, successfully earning the coveted Ranger tab. In doing so, he transitioned from a celebrated athlete into a dedicated, highly trained infantry soldier, ready for deployment. Tillman's first deployment as an Army Ranger came in early 2003 as part of Operation Iraqi Freedom. His unit, the 2nd Battalion 75th Ranger Regiment, was among the first ground troops to enter Iraq. Life in the war zone was a stark, brutal contrast to the manicured lawns of NFL stadiums. The environment was harsh and unforgiving, endless stretches of desert, extreme temperatures, and the constant, underlying threat of enemy engagement. This was a world defined by dust, heat, and the ever-present tension of combat. As a ranger, Tillman's daily life was consumed by the realities of combat operations. His unit was involved in direct action missions, often conducting raids, patrols, and intelligence-gathering operations behind enemy lines. The work was dangerous, demanding, and required constant vigilance. Days were long, often stretching into sleepless nights filled with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and the anxiety of potential ambushes. The physical toll was immense. Soldiers operated under extreme stress, carrying heavy equipment for extended periods in unforgiving terrain. Tillman, with his incredible stamina and mental fortitude, was well suited to these demands, consistently performing at a high level. Beyond the physical demands, life in the war zone also exerted a significant psychological toll. Soldiers faced the constant threat of death or injury, witnessed the horrors of war firsthand, and lived with the perpetual uncertainty of combat. Tillman, known for his thoughtful and introspective nature, grappled with the moral complexities of the conflict. He was an avid reader and often carried books with him, seeking to understand the historical and philosophical dimensions of the war he was fighting. He engaged in deep conversations with his fellow Rangers, discussing the purpose of their mission, the nature of good and evil, and the sacrifices they were making. These discussions revealed his continued intellectual curiosity and his desire to find meaning in the chaos surrounding him. During his deployment in Iraq, Tillman experienced the raw realities of combat. He was involved in engagements that brought him face to face with the enemy and the consequences of warfare. While the specific details of all his combat experiences remain classified, it is known that he performed his duties with courage and distinction. He was a committed soldier, earning the respect of his comrades through his unwavering dedication, his selflessness, and his willingness to always put his fellow Rangers first. His NFL celebrity, which might have created a barrier with other soldiers, quickly faded in the crucible of combat. In the war zone, he was simply Tillman, a trusted and respected member of the Ranger Regiment. After his initial deployment in Iraq, Tillman and his unit were subsequently deployed to Afghanistan as part of Operation Enduring Freedom. This shift brought a different set of challenges. Afghanistan's rugged, mountainous terrain presented formidable obstacles, and the nature of the insurgency meant that threats could emerge from any direction. The enemy was often elusive, blending into the civilian population, making combat operations even more complex and dangerous. This environment demanded extreme adaptability and constant vigilance from the Rangers. Life in Afghanistan mirrored the intensity of Iraq, but with its own unique characteristics. The patrols were longer, often through treacherous mountain passes and remote villages. The risk of improvised explosive devices, IEDs, was ever present, adding another layer of danger to every movement. Tillman continued to serve with distinction, demonstrating his unwavering commitment to his fellow soldiers and the mission. He often took on additional responsibilities, displaying a maturity and leadership that belied his relatively short time in the Army. He was a soldier who led by example, never asking anyone to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. Despite the harsh realities of war, Tillman remained true to his core values. He maintained a strong correspondence with his family and his wife, Marie, his letters often reflecting his introspective thoughts on the conflict and his experiences. He continued to read voraciously, seeking wisdom and perspective in the midst of chaos. He was known to carry books by authors such as Ralph Waldo Emerson and Noam Chomsky, indicating his desire to critically analyze the war and its broader implications. This intellectual engagement was a coping mechanism, a way for him to process the intense experiences he was undergoing. However, Tillman's thoughts on the war were not always in alignment with the prevailing public narrative. His letters and conversations with family and friends revealed a growing disillusionment with the strategic objectives and the conduct of the war. He questioned the justifications for the conflict, the political rhetoric surrounding it, and the leadership's decisions. He reportedly expressed discomfort with the military's use of his image for propaganda purposes, feeling that his service was being co-opted to serve a political agenda he didn't fully endorse. This internal conflict between his duty as a soldier and his critical intellectual perspective weighed heavily on him, adding another layer of complexity to his life in the war zone. His unique background as a former NFL star also brought an unwanted level of scrutiny and expectation. While his fellow Rangers treated him as one of their own, the military establishment was keenly aware of his public profile. Tillman actively sought to avoid special treatment or public attention, preferring to simply be a soldier. He often expressed frustration with any attempts to highlight his celebrity, wanting his service to be seen as a genuine act of patriotism, not a public relations stunt. This desire for anonymity in his service, however, would ultimately prove to be impossible, particularly after the tragic events that would soon unfold. Life in the war zone for Pat Tillman was not just a test of physical endurance, but a profound moral and intellectual crucible, pushing him to confront the grim realities of conflict while striving to maintain his integrity and sense of purpose. On April 22, 2004, Pat Tillman was deployed with his unit, the 2nd Platoon, Company A, 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, to Afghanistan. They were operating in the rugged, mountainous terrain of the Sirah district in Khost province, near the Pakistan border. The mission was part of Operation Strong Eagle, a major offensive aimed at flushing out Taliban and Al-Qaeda insurgents in a known hotbed of enemy activity. The environment was notoriously hostile, characterized by narrow, winding roads, treacherous ravines, and the constant threat of ambushes and improvised explosive devices, IEDs. The air was thick with tension, and every patrol was undertaken with a heightened sense of vigilance. On this particular day, Tillman's platoon was divided into 2 columns of vehicles as they moved through a canyon near the village of Mana. The terrain was unforgiving, with steep, rocky walls that created natural choke points, making it an ideal location for an ambush. The first column of vehicles encountered mechanical problems, forcing them to stop. This unexpected halt created a gap between the 2 columns, leaving the trailing column, which included Tillman's vehicle, momentarily vulnerable and isolated. It was a critical tactical error, one that would have fatal consequences. As the second column moved to catch up, the Rangers suddenly found themselves under intense enemy fire. The ambush erupted with shocking ferocity. Insurgents, likely Taliban or Al-Qaeda fighters, had positioned themselves on the high ground overlooking the canyon, utilizing the natural terrain to their advantage. They unleashed a torrent of small arms fire, including AK-47s and machine guns, as well as rocket-propelled grenades, RPGs. The volleys of gunfire echoed through the narrow canyon, creating a chaotic and deadly scene. Tillman's vehicle, a Humvee, was caught in the direct line of fire. The Rangers immediately dismounted and took up defensive positions, returning fire to suppress the enemy. The training and discipline of the elite Ranger unit kicked in, even amidst the terrifying onslaught. Their immediate response was to engage the enemy and protect their comrades. The sounds of combat were deafening. The crack of rifle fire, the thud of RPGs impacting nearby, and the shouts of soldiers trying to communicate amidst the chaos. Dust and debris filled the air as bullets ricocheted off rocks and vehicles. In the confusion and intense crossfire, visibility was severely hampered. The terrain, combined with the smoke and dust generated by the firefight, made it incredibly difficult for the Rangers to distinguish between enemy positions and their own forces. Communication, already challenging in combat, became even more fragmented and unreliable. The urgency of the situation, the instinct to return fire and neutralize the threat, often overrides precise identification in such chaotic moments. During the ambush, Tillman and a fellow Ranger dismounted from their vehicle to pursue enemy fighters who had been spotted on a nearby ridge. This was a common maneuver for Rangers, aggressively closing with the enemy. As they maneuvered through the treacherous terrain, trying to gain a tactical advantage, the firefight continued to rage around them. They were under direct enemy fire, navigating a dangerous and confusing landscape, attempting to pinpoint and engage the insurgents. The decision to move to higher ground was an offensive one, aimed at suppressing the ambush and protecting their unit. However, in the fog of war, a tragic and devastating chain of events was set in motion. Another element of Tillman's own platoon, positioned further down in the canyon and unaware of Tillman's exact position, began firing in the direction of the perceived enemy threat. Due to the limited visibility, the complex terrain, and the overwhelming stress of the ambush, these Rangers mistakenly identified Tillman and his small team as enemy combatants. It was a catastrophic error, born of the chaos and pressure of a sudden, brutal firefight. The friendly fire began to rain down on Tillman and his comrade. It was unclear at the time if they were being hit by enemy fire or by their own forces, but the impact was devastating. Tillman was struck multiple times in the head by rifle fire. The wounds were immediately fatal. He collapsed, dying instantly on the battlefield, caught between the two lines of fire. His fellow Ranger, also caught in the same tragic sequence, sustained injuries, but survived. The firefight eventually subsided, and the Rangers secured the area. As they began to assess the situation and account for their personnel, the horrific truth began to emerge. Pat Tillman, the former NFL star who had given up a life of fame and fortune to serve his country, lay dead, not by the hands of the enemy, but by friendly fire. The initial shock among his comrades would have been profound, quickly turning to disbelief and then a chilling realization of the tragic mistake. The immediate aftermath on the ground was one of immense confusion and a desperate attempt to understand what had transpired. Commanders would have been trying to piece together the sequence of events, to understand how such a devastating friendly fire incident could have occurred amidst an active ambush. The immediate priority would have been securing the area, tending to the wounded, and preparing for the grim task of reporting Tillman's death. The weight of the moment, the loss of a highly respected comrade, compounded by the horrific nature of his death, would have settled heavily upon the unit. News of Tillman's death quickly reached higher command. The circumstances, given his high-profile status, immediately raised red flags. His death was not just another casualty of war, it was the death of an American icon, a symbol of patriotism and sacrifice. The military leadership was acutely aware of the potential public reaction to the death of an NFL star, especially if the truth about friendly fire were to immediately come out. This awareness, coupled with the inherent desire to protect the image of the military and the morale of the troops, set the stage for what would become a highly controversial and deeply damaging cover-up. The ambush that killed Pat Tillman was a tragic event, but the events that followed would transform it into a national scandal, forever altering his legacy and igniting a bitter fight for truth. The chaos of the ambush in Spera district on April 22, 2004, where Pat Tillman tragically lost his life, quickly gave way to a deliberate and concerted effort by elements within the U.S. military to control the narrative surrounding his death. What began as a tragic friendly fire incident rapidly escalated into a deliberate cover-up, driven by a desire to preserve an image of heroism and maintain public morale during wartime. Immediately following Tillman's death, the initial reports from the ground were contradictory and confusing, a common occurrence in the fog of war. However, key individuals on the scene quickly realized that Tillman had been killed by friendly fire. Within hours of the incident, soldiers in Tillman's platoon knew he had been killed by his own comrades. At least one Ranger, Specialist Brian O'Neill, who was with Tillman when he died, reported seeing his squad leader open fire on Tillman's position after misidentifying them as enemy combatants. This direct testimony, along with other eyewitness accounts, formed the core of the truth. Despite these immediate, on-the-ground observations, the military's official response began to diverge from reality almost immediately. Within 24 hours of his death, Commanders in Afghanistan, including then-Lieutenant General Philip Kensinger, head of Army Special Operations, were aware that Tillman had likely died from friendly fire. Yet this crucial detail was deliberately withheld from the public and, most egregiously, from the Tillman family. Instead, the Pentagon and top military officials crafted a narrative that portrayed Pat Tillman as a quintessential war hero, killed by enemy fire while bravely leading his unit. Initial public statements and press releases described how Tillman was killed in an intense firefight with enemy forces, heroically engaging the enemy to protect his fellow soldiers. He was awarded a posthumous Silver Star and Purple Heart, and his death was used as a powerful symbol of sacrifice and patriotism, fueling nationalistic fervor and recruitment efforts. His funeral was a highly publicized event, with eulogies from prominent figures reinforcing the fabricated narrative of a heroic death in direct combat with the enemy. The reasons behind this calculated deception were complex but rooted in military and political considerations. At the time, the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan were becoming increasingly controversial, and public support was showing signs of wavering. Tillman's story, an NFL star leaving millions to serve his country, was a public relations goldmine. To reveal that such a high-profile figure had died not from enemy action, but from a mistake by his own side, would have been a public relations disaster. It could have damaged public trust in the military, lowered troop morale, and provided ammunition to critics of the war. Protecting the image of the armed forces and maintaining a narrative of unwavering heroism became paramount, even at the cost of the truth. The cover-up involved multiple layers of the military hierarchy. Eyewitness accounts from soldiers on the ground were reportedly suppressed or altered. Key documents were allegedly withheld or manipulated. Initial reports that indicated friendly fire were changed to reflect enemy engagement. Officers who knew the truth were reportedly instructed not to share details that contradicted the official story. Some soldiers later testified that they were pressured to align their statements with the fabricated narrative. This systemic effort to conceal the truth created a web of deceit that entangled numerous individuals and ultimately led to a deep sense of betrayal among those who knew what truly happened. The Tillman family, grieving and desperate for answers, initially accepted the military's heroic narrative. They were told by military officials that Pat died in a fierce ambush, bravely charging up a hill to protect his comrades. However, inconsistencies in the official accounts and fragmented information began to raise their suspicions. Pat's mother, Mary Tillman, and his father, Patrick Tillman Sr., known for their independent and critical thinking, felt that something was amiss. They pressed for more information, demanding to see official reports and speak directly with the Rangers who were present during the ambush. Their relentless pursuit of the truth slowly began to chip away at the military's carefully constructed facade. They noticed discrepancies in the timeline of events, conflicting statements from different officials, and a general reluctance from the military to provide clear, consistent answers. The family's growing distrust was met with stonewalling and evasiveness, which only deepened their conviction that a cover-up was underway. The first major crack in the official story came in May 2004, just weeks after Pat's death, when internal Army investigations began to leak information to the media. The Washington Post was among the first to report that military investigators were looking into the possibility of friendly fire. This leak confirmed the family's worst fears and publicly exposed the military's deception. The revelation sparked outrage across the country as the public realized they had been misled about the death of a national hero. Subsequent investigations, including those by the Pentagon Inspector General and congressional committees, eventually corroborated the friendly fire account. These investigations uncovered evidence of deliberate efforts by military officials to suppress information, mislead the Tillman family, and deceive the public. Reports detailed how crucial evidence was destroyed or withheld, and how senior officers actively participated in crafting the false narrative. While no one was ultimately charged with criminal offenses related to the cover-up, Several officers faced administrative reprimands or demotions for their roles in the deception. The revelations about the cover-up were devastating to the Tillman family. They felt not only the profound grief of losing Pat, but also the searing pain of betrayal by the institution he had so honorably served. They condemned the military's actions as a disservice to Pat's legacy and a grave insult to his sacrifice. They argued that the military's attempt to sanitize his death for propaganda purposes stripped him of his true identity and the honest context of his service. For the Tillman family, the fight for truth was not about blame, but about integrity and honoring Pat's unwavering commitment to honesty. The truth about friendly fire, finally forced into the light, forever changed the narrative of Pat Tillman's death, transforming it from a simple tragedy into a complex saga of heroism, deception, and a relentless quest for accountability. The truth about Pat Tillman's death, killed by friendly fire in a chaotic ambush, brought not a sense of closure to his family, but rather the beginning of a relentless, years-long battle for accountability and transparency from the U.S. military. The initial grief of losing their beloved son and brother was compounded by a searing sense of betrayal, fueled by the revelation that the heroic narrative they had initially been given was a deliberate fabrication. For the Tillman family, particularly Pat's parents, Mary and Patrick Sr., and his brother Kevin and wife Marie, the fight for answers became their singular defining mission. Their suspicions began almost immediately after Pat's death on April 22, 2004. While the military initially presented a straightforward story of Pat heroically dying in an intense firefight with the enemy, inconsistencies quickly emerged. The family, known for their sharp intellect and critical thinking, noticed discrepancies in the accounts provided by different military officials. The details of the ambush seemed to shift, and the official statements felt strangely sanitized. They were also deeply troubled by the military's reluctance to allow them to view Pat's body, which had been quickly cremated. This unexplained haste, combined with conflicting timelines and vague answers, began to gnaw at their trust. Mary Tillman, Pat's mother, became the driving force behind the family's quest for truth. A woman of fierce intelligence and unwavering determination, she refused to accept the official story at face value. She began systematically documenting every conversation with military officials, cross-referencing information, and scrutinizing every press release. Her meticulous approach laid the groundwork for the family's formal demands for transparency. She, along with Pat's father, Patrick Sr., believed that honoring Pat's legacy meant uncovering the complete and unvarnished truth, regardless of how painful or inconvenient it might be for the military. The family's first major step was to demand the release of all official reports related to Pat's death. They wanted to see the detailed combat reports, witness statements, and any investigative findings. Their requests were initially met with resistance and obfuscation. The military provided redacted documents, offered vague explanations, and attempted to steer the family away from questions that challenged the heroic narrative. This stonewalling only strengthened the Tillmans' conviction that something significant was being hidden. Their persistence eventually led to the shocking revelation that Pat had been killed by friendly fire. This truth, initially leaked by internal Army investigators to the Washington Post in May 2004, confirmed their deepest fears and publicly exposed the military's deception. The family expressed profound anger and betrayal. Mary Tillman publicly stated that the military had lied to them, and Patrick Tillman Sr. condemned the cover-up as an insult to his son's sacrifice and an egregious breach of trust. This public condemnation put immense pressure on the Pentagon and forced them to acknowledge the friendly fire aspect, though the full extent of the cover-up was still being concealed. The Tillman family then escalated their fight, demanding multiple investigations into the circumstances surrounding Pat's death and the subsequent cover-up. They called for inquiries by the Pentagon Inspector General, the Army Criminal Investigation Command, CID, and eventually congressional committees. Their goal was not simply to confirm friendly fire, which was by then publicly known, but to understand why the truth had been concealed and who was responsible for the deception. They sought accountability from the highest levels of military leadership. Over the next several years, the family engaged in a relentless campaign for answers. They met with top military officials, members of Congress, and journalists. They provided impassioned testimony before congressional committees, detailing the military's stonewalling and deception. Mary Tillman, in particular, became a powerful voice, articulating their pain and demanding justice. She meticulously outlined the chain of command that she believed was responsible for the cover-up, pointing fingers at generals and other high-ranking officers. These investigations, largely spurred by the family's unrelenting pressure, uncovered increasingly damning evidence of deliberate deception. Reports from the Pentagon Inspector General and congressional hearings confirmed that at least 5 separate investigations into Tillman's death had been conducted by the military, and that key details about friendly fire were known within days of his death but were intentionally suppressed. Evidence emerged suggesting that documents were withheld, altered, or destroyed. Eyewitness accounts from rangers on the ground who had seen Pat killed by friendly fire were allegedly pressured to conform to the false narrative. The family was particularly incensed by the findings that high-ranking officers, including then-Lieutenant General Philip Kinzinger, were aware of the friendly fire circumstances yet allowed the false narrative to propagate. While military investigations concluded that there was no criminal intent in the cover-up, the family vehemently disagreed, arguing that the deliberate deception amounted to a criminal act. They pointed out that while several officers faced administrative reprimands, no one faced severe consequences or court-martial for their roles in the conspiracy to mislead the public and the Tillman family. This perceived lack of genuine accountability was a constant source of frustration and anger for the family. Beyond the formal investigations, the Tillman family also took their fight directly to the public. They gave numerous interviews, wrote articles, and participated in documentaries. Their unwavering commitment to truth resonated deeply with many Americans, transforming Pat Tillman from merely a fallen soldier into a symbol of integrity and the devastating consequences of government secrecy. Their efforts ensured that Pat's story remained in the public consciousness, preventing it from being conveniently forgotten. The family's fight was not without personal cost. It was emotionally draining and consumed years of their lives. They faced criticism from some who accused them of being unpatriotic or of disrespecting the military. However, they consistently maintained that their fight was for the integrity of the military and for the truth, values that Pat himself embodied. They believed that allowing the deception to stand would dishonor Pat's sacrifice more than any uncomfortable truth. The Tillman family's tireless pursuit of answers, despite immense personal pain and institutional resistance, ultimately forced the U.S. military to acknowledge its deception. While they may not have achieved the full accountability they sought for those responsible for the cover-up, their relentless efforts ensured that Pat Tillman's true story, complex, tragic, and deeply human, was finally told. Their fight transformed a personal tragedy into a profound national discussion about truth, sacrifice, and the ethics of warfare. Pat Tillman died a hero, but it was his family's unwavering commitment to truth that solidified his legacy as a beacon of integrity against overwhelming odds. The Tillman family's relentless fight for answers is a powerful testament to their courage and unwavering commitment to truth, even in the face of immense grief and institutional resistance. Pat Tillman's story continues to provoke questions about heroism, government accountability, and the real cost of war. What does Pat Tillman's legacy mean to you? And what lessons do you think we should draw from his family's tireless pursuit of the truth? Share your reflections in the comments below. If this deeply moving and revealing story resonated with you, please give this video a like, subscribe to The Dark Chapters for more compelling true stories that challenge conventional narratives, and ring the notification bell so you never miss another profound journey into the complexities of human experience. And don't forget to share this video with someone who values integrity and the relentless pursuit of truth.